Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free. Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this court,
Give us free.
Peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new Black Village Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, JC, aka Afro Black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut, without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucker you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the Black Village Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all, living here and above.
DC in the house.
It's a domino effect. That domino tip, it's gonna make the rest of them fall.
The Los Angeles police officially reprimanded Police Chief Daryl Gates.
We were having deaths from the chokehold. He didn't get along with the community.
It just got out of control.
We are determined to take back the streets of Los Angeles.
Operation Hammer was a free ticket to go out there and do overly aggressive police work.
What I witnessed at the scene was 100% LAPD policy.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
You just disrespect us like this? Like our lives don't matter?
Like pouring gasoline and striking a match. It's not protest anymore. Now it's a full-blown riot.
Soon Jadu, found guilty of killing a 16-year-old girl, received no jail time.
She got away with murder. Black and brown people are being beat up, shot, choked to death by police forces all over this country.
Everybody's gone. The government don't wanna see. Bang, bang, shot dead. Everybody's gone. The government don't wanna see.
Oh, they seeing hers now.
Bang, bang, shot dead. Everybody's gone.
R.I.P. Mike Brown.
Bang, shot dead. Everybody's gone.
Got shot to my city for coming together. Ain't never seen nothing like it. I can say this happened in my day. Shout out to the peaceful protesters who marched and rallied. Got even shot the others who thought they had to take other measures. All in belief, though, not reckless. I salute my city. Let me tell you how it went down. Got the world watching. They can feel the tension of an angry generation. Fuck a politician. It's my people on the mission. They finally fed up of the injustices, and they finally said enough. We get flagged by the county brown every time we riding down Chambers, so the anger just inflame if you understand. could have been my son or my nephew or my cousin though. Say he tried to get his gun, witness say he wasn't though. So this lack of info make it seem like who you covering for. So it got us thinking you just killed that boy for nothing. No, shit got shifty when the cop fled quickly. Then they brought the dogs in like it was 1950. We like, hold up.
Hey, this is JC, aka Afro Black, and I am here with you for another delicious Black Sunday to drop nothing but the raw and uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And I'm here for another delicious Black Sunday to share nothing but the raw and uncut. And this is a continuation for the third week that I'm doing this podcast subject matter, for the exact reason that we are still having protests all over this country for a number of different reasons. Not just protests against Trump. We got protests against police officers. We got protests against white nationalism going on, like the protest that went on in Charlottesville, where the young protester Heather Heyer was mowed down by a idiot white supremacist. So we got protests, and we still got protests going on in places like St. Louis, where the young man was killed by a cop and the cop was exonerated. And so, and there's been protests going on in St. Louis for the past week as a result. So we're on the subject matter, which is titled, our podcast subject matter is, and I quote, "The People's Right." Subtitle: The Power of the Media and Media Protest. Again, today's podcast subject matter is, for the third week, the people's right. The power of the media and media protest. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So on that note, let me change our music to give us something more laid back to vibrate to. Here we go. That's Brother Kim. And the title of that, you can catch it on YouTube, titled The Front Line. So I'm going to put this in the backdrop as we vibrate. My queen is here with me today, so I'm not here alone to vibrate on this subject matter, as well as anyone who joins me in the conference room. As I view the conference room, I can tell my brother Currington is here with me. But let me introduce my queen, let my queen join us here today. Queen, go ahead and let the people know what's going on.
Hello, my beautiful people.
So my queen joined me last week on this subject matter, and she's here, and she pressed in. Again, a hard-working indigenous sister who takes care of her family. And so we're going to vibrate today on today's subject matter about the power of the media. You feel me? If anybody knows anything about the history of protest, the protest movement, which Martin Luther King brought a lot of attention to the protest movement. Protesters were going on before Martin Luther King. And for the most part, those protesters were not didn't get the media attention that Martin Luther King brought to the protest movement. But one of the methodologies that Martin Luther King used was what he called was passive resistance. And that is, a part of passive resistance protesting is to make sure that it grabs the attention of the media, using the media as a medium to expand and to amplify the movement, to bring more attention to the protest movement. Now, due to the fact that Martin Luther King used the media as a medium, used the media as a tool and a device to amplify the protest movement, do you agree, Queen, that he did this?
Yeah.
And there's been many interviews that Dr. King had before his passing where he said that he admitted to doing this, that he used the media, he used the reporters, he used the newspaper, and due to the fact that the media is a powerful force in this country, on the internet, and just in the populace in general, that's a question that has to be raised. What is the power of the media and media protest? And so this is a subject matter I want to discuss today, because rather if the media has the power that we believe, that I believe that it has, that many other people believe that the media has, then the question is, has the media hurt the cause of liberation and equality in this country? Is it real, and does it exist in the essence of a force to be reckoned with? So these are points that I want to talk about. I got 3 points I want to mention, and that's the first point. The first point is it real and does it exist? The power of the media. The second one, has the media helped or hurt the cause of liberation and equality on the level of the cause of black Americans, as far as us being black Americans? And the third point I want to make out, is it true or isn't it true? Is it true or is it not true? Rather, if the media is biased in the essence of its coverage, in the essence of how it covers the news, or how it covers social issues that go on in this country and bring it to the populace. And so them are things I want to talk about today. I also have some audio casts that I want to play. So before I take this to the next level and go into this subject matter, let me see if anybody in the conference room, like my brother Currington, I've been trying to contact you, brother. I'm glad you're here today. Anything you want to say before we take this to the next level?
Not at this moment.
Okay, I'm gonna mute you for a little bit, but when I get ready to bring back where we can come have a discussion on anything that was being talked about, I'm gonna open it up right at that point. Okay. So let me continue this thing here, and let me get this verbatim. I want to, before I go into any audio cast, and I got some. Matter of fact, you know what? Wow, the information I want to talk about. Like I said, when the subtitle of today's podcast is "The Power of the Media and Media Protest." Now, what I mean by media protest, and you know what I'm talking about when I say media protest, Queen? I'm wondering if you know.
No, I don't.
You're a smart woman. That's why
I'm coming in kind of a little bit blind here, so
well, we didn't get a chance to verberate on too much, but I did share a little bit with you. What I mean by media protest is those who have the microphone to tell the truth to the populace. Those who have the microphone, the media. Those who have the microphone. Prime example: Shannon Sharp. Last week I did last week, which was the second week of this podcast topic, which is the people's rights. I talked about the situation with Brother Colin Kaepernick, and I talked about how really the only, there's a lot of people who speaking on his behalf, but the people with some of the loudest microphones, and that's media protest, is people like Shannon Sharp and Max Kellerman. Would you agree, Queen?
Yeah.
And they work for ESPN. But they've been telling the raw and uncut. It's not because they've been siding with Brother Kaepernick. It's because they've been siding with truth. They've been siding on the side of truth and integrity. And so that's what I mean by media protest. When you got those in the media who speaks the truth, that's media protest, in my opinion. When those who have direct access to the media, able to use the media to the fullest, you feel me, without any repercussions. You feel me? Basically, you being able to have access to the power of media. Like Jamil Hill, that sister, how they've been trying to hang her out to dry. And she didn't even use ESPN as a platform as Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp has been able to use ESPN and his access to sports media to express the truth on behalf of what he knows is true and rightful of how they've been blackballing Brother Colin Kaepernick. And so he's been speaking truth to ignorance. He's been speaking truth to a lie. He's been speaking truth to those who want to turn their head to the truth. So on that level, this is what I mean by media protest. When you use the media as a device, as a tool, as a medium to express the truth through a means of protesting. This is what Brother Colin Kaepernick was doing. Because he is a celebrity, because he's an athlete, because the NFL is viewed on television, played on radio, on the internet, so people can view the NFL. He was able to use the media as a means of peaceful protest. And so that's what I mean by media protest. Now, a part of the subtitle as well, is the power of the media. So we're going to start with the power of the media. Queen, I would love for you to read right here what says the role of mass media in economic development. If you can read that, that would be great.
A free press is not a luxury. It is the core of equitable development. The media can expose corruption. They can keep a check on public policy by throwing a spotlight on government action. They let people...
Before we, I want you to continue. I want to say I took this from a book. It's called The Role of Mass Media in Economic Development. So this is from a book, and this is a book that focused its attention and its study and research on the power of the media. So I'm sorry, Queen. I didn't mean to interrupt like that, but I didn't get a chance to let the people know what you're reading and what it's about. So please go ahead.
They let people voice diverse opinions in governance and reform and help build public consensus to bring about change. Such media help markets work better. They can facilitate trade, transmitting ideas and innovation across boundaries. The media are also important for human development, bringing health and education information to remote villages in countries from Uganda to Nicaragua. But as experience has shown, the independence of the media can be fragile and easily compromised. It is clear that to support development, media need the right environment in terms of freedoms, capacities, and checks and balances. The World Development Report in 2002, Building Institution for Markets, devoted a chapter to the role of the media in development. This volume is an extension of that work. It discusses how media affects development outcomes under different circumstances and presents evidence on what policy environment is needed to enable the media to support economic and political markets and to provide a voice for the disenfranchised. To this end, it draws together the views of the academics as well as the perspectives from those on the front line, journalists themselves.
Okay, now I decided to use that because if you pay attention to what she just read, you see that it talks about the power of the media. It says the media can expose corruption. It says that this is what she just got done reading. And I took this from a book that basically does research on the power and the influence politically, economically, and through the guise of medium itself, of how it influences the populace, economics, politics. And this really speaks to that by saying that media can expose corruption. They can keep checks. It can keep a check on public policy by throwing a spotlight on government action. They let people voice their diverse opinions on government and reform and help build public consensus to bring about change. And that's what using the media for media protest. That's what the power of the media, when the media rightfully covers a situation, regardless if it's the police, if it's a corrupt politician, if it's just something that's going on in your community, to make the community alert of what's going on in the community. This is the power of the media. And so the question is it helping black people? Well, I'm going to tell you something. In my opinion, throw some of my thoughts on this process before we take it to the next level, and I play some AUDIOCAST. The media has ignored a lot of things, in my opinion. Prime example, the fact that black people, the majority of black Americans, I'm not speaking for those who've come over here from Africa. I'm not speaking to those who've been here been in America from Africa, who have grandparents who are already here, and they're maybe the children of the grandchildren of African immigrants. I'm talking about black people who don't know their family tree and their family history because they've been here, their grandparents been here, and their great-grandparents and their great-great-grandparents has been here forever, and that's all they know, but they don't know the history of who they are. These people are black Aborigines. We are black Aborigines. We are Aborigines of America. And that's a history that media has ignored. That's not history that the historians have ignored. A lot of historians have ignored it, modern day historians, but there's a lot of historians that's out there that's telling the truth. That tells you the truth about Aboriginal history, that the Paleo-Americans, that the Paleo-Amerindians are the black Aborigines of America. And you got people out there who are voicing it, like Sister Queen Chief Mother, Chief Warhorse of the Choctaw tribes in New Orleans, who's voicing the fact of who we are. You have those out there who of the Yamasee tribe in Florida who are voicing who we are. But you know what? There's too many house Negroes out there who don't want to cover this. There's too many house Negroes out there. And as a result of that, you have people ignoring the truth. And so this is where it's necessary for if black people really cared as much about their heritage, their culture, and their true identity, rather than the false narrative, rather than what the white man wants to pose and feed our people. If we was to use the media in a unified front, we can bring more light on our true identity. And I know somebody saying you're getting off the subject, you're talking about Aboriginal or Indigenous or Black Indian heritage, but this is my example of how the media chooses what to talk about. We all know that the media does that, right, Queen? The media chooses what it wants to talk about, true?
I believe so. They do the reporting, they do the jobs, and then they do what they think will get them more ratings and not actually what will help the people.
Exactly. And you know what? It's not just they also do what they do to get the ratings. They also do what they do in the essence of them being concerned about what their co-workers or what their employees or their fellow constituents think of. You know, they don't give a damn about how things affect the black community or how black community feels about media, not on a mass scale. They care more about their white counterparts. And so they do what is in the eyes of what's in the best interest of the agenda rather than what's right. And so on that note, before I take things to the next level, I want to share an audio cast. And I said I want to talk about Jamila Hill. And the reason I want to talk about her is because she is an ESPN sports host on ESPN. And she tweeted something just recently, and this is the power of media protest that I want to point out. The power of media protest. So let me play this audio cast, and we shall take it from there. And we'll return and we'll continue our discussion on the people's right, the power of the media and media protest.
Welcome back to the Daily Show. Let's talk for a minute about the Twitter. It's a wonderful invention, but we have learned that if you ever tweet something that offends too many people, you could get fired from your job. Or you could become president. High risk, very high reward. And once again, there's a tweet that's blowing up the news.
A controversy about ESPN host Jemele Hill.
Jemele Hill went on a Twitter rampage.
Jemele Hill came under fire this week after she tweeted on Monday that President Donald Trump is a white supremacist who has largely surrounded himself with other white supremacists.
ESPN responded with a statement. The comments on Twitter from Jemele Hill regarding the president do not represent the position of ESPN. We have addressed this with Jemele, and she recognizes her actions were inappropriate.
Wow. This is the biggest controversy in sports since the Philly Fanatic sex tape. Really, really big. And now you're picturing it. For more on Jemele Hill and this controversy, we're joined by Roy Wood Jr., everybody. Roy. I can see why people are upset about this. She called the President of the United States a white supremacist.
She did. I know, Trevor. Where could she have gotten that idea? I mean, who in their right mind would... Oh, yeah, everybody. Even Congress, they just passed a unanimous bipartisan resolution asking Trump to condemn white supremacists. Trump is the only white dude I know that had to sign paperwork to prove he don't like Nazis. Nazis aren't my friend. We're going to need that in writing. Look. And another thing, Trevor, man, y'all need to get off Jemele Hill, man. Don't get mad about what she tweeted. She's cool people.
Oh, okay. I mean, I wasn't on her, but I do have to ask, do you want people to go easy on Jemele Hill because you know her?
Well, I don't know Jemele Hill. I don't know Jemele Hill, Drew Hill, Jonah Hill. I don't know none of them. I couldn't pick the girl out of a lineup.
Oh, wow, really? Then who is this on Jemele's show?
You like Waffle House. Or as I call it, Awful House.
Now, what you're not going to do is disrespect.
No, that's what I am going to do.
You're not going to disrespect the dub.
Handle that,
Roy.
Look, they might.
Dub H, you going to disrespect the dub.
You on a personal basis with him?
Yeah, I'm from the South. I'm from Alabama. Everybody from the South born in a Waffle House. He's just going to pull the tapes out. He's going to pull the tapes out on the brother. Look, you can't expect me to remember everybody I have a fight with about Waffle House. Anyway, this isn't about Waffle House. This is about the White House. This story only blew up because the White House got involved. Because what Jemele Hill said, honestly, should have just been another day on Twitter.
There you go. You heard it, the raw and uncut. I had to play that. That is a clip that I took from the Daily Show, Trevor Noah, the Daily Show. And the reason why I chose that clip, and you might say, it was a little bit lengthy, but because he is a political news comedian. Basically, he takes the truth of politics and bring it to you in a funny way, but it's still the truth. And so the raw and uncut of here is that he's pointing out how they are exploding, they are amplifying the news coverage of a tweet that Jemele Hill put on Twitter about her thoughts about the the present chief and celebrity comedian president, Donald Trump. The thing about it is that the fact that she pointed out that she called him a white supremacist and that he surrounds himself with white supremacy is what they want to try to make it seem like it's the most atrocious thing that's ever been said to a president, when everybody is saying it, and he's putting himself in a situation for it to be said because he does not denounce it. He doesn't distance himself from those groups or those peoples who have those thoughts. So on that note, I just thought, I thought it was necessary to point out that Jemele Hill, again, she is an ESPN sports host. She has her own sports show, and so what she did, her tweet was not while she was at work. She didn't make the tweet from her job, from her office, from her desk. She didn't make the tweet on the air of ESPN. It was at the comfort of her home, or wherever she might been, on her computer, and on her private time, she expressed her political thoughts. And so now ESPN demanded and required for her to render an apology, and and she did in her own way without directly apologizing to Mr. Trump. But it was at the expense of the fact that her statements had nothing to do with her job. It was her personal statement. But it's the fact that you got those on the right using the power of the media to try to hurt her. They even asked for her job. The president or the president's administration asked for ESPN to fire her. Well, I'm glad they didn't do so. But the point is, like I said, the same thing they did to brother Colin Kaepernick. Whenever white people get disgruntled, whenever white people realize that you have a voice that can draw attention to something, like celebrities like brother Colin Kaepernick, and that's why they blackballed him from the NFL, or sister Jemele Hill, who is a host at ESPN because she has a show and because she is a sports media host. And so their way of trying to silence her was to ask for her resignation, or to demand that ESPN to discipline her in such a way that she would lose her job. And that's what these white devils do. If they can't do something directly, especially to somebody black with a little bit of power, somebody black with a little bit of prestige, or somebody black that can draw attention, first thing they want to do is they're trying to hurt you financially. And that's what they're doing to brother Kaepernick right now. So on that note, let me see, brother Curtin, anything you want to say? Have you heard about the Jemele Hill thing, my brother? I want to bring you in on this since you're sitting there listening to this.
Actually, this is the first time I heard about it. I'm not really familiar with it.
You haven't heard about the sister who said that Donald Trump is a racist? And that white supremacy is what got him into the president's seat. She made this statement. She said he surrounds himself with white supremacists. And you didn't hear about that, huh?
No. But I would say this about media itself. Media is very influential in what the masses think.
I have to agree with that. So you believe, like I believe, that the media cultivates or influences people's viewpoints or the way they see things.
Definitely.
Now, would you say that
they're a big influence?
Would you say that influence today is stronger than it was, say, 30 or 40 years ago?
Very, very much.
Okay, now why would you say that the influence or the power of media today is stronger than it was 30, 40 years ago? Why would you make that statement?
Because there's more people connected today than there were back during that time period. You know, at one point you may had once a month or however often, you know, newspaper coming in about what's going on in the world. Today you got, you know, hundreds of sources, you know, to choose from to get information.
What about the fact that the power of media has been used not only to make black people look bad, to make black protesters look like criminals, but also how the media have also used its power to criminalize, not only like how Donald Trump was criminalizing all Latinos who come over here from Mexico, somehow as if they're all criminals and rapists and bringing drugs out. How they try to make Muslims paint Muslims all with the same paintbrushes. All Muslims are jihadists, or all Muslims are out to kill people. You know, media, it appears to me, tell me, I'd like to know your thoughts on this though, bro. Media seems to me have had more power under the guise and under the hands and influence of politicians and the elitists than anybody in this country. Would you agree?
Yeah, and if we look back in time, media has been used to persuade the masses how they think or how they thought about black folks in general. You know, I mean, the media was even so influential in the thought process of how people think about black folks. It has black folks even think in certain ways about themselves.
That is definitely positively. That's definitely true. That is definitely true. Well, you know what? Then, like I said, I mean, it makes me wonder sometime when I think about it. When I think about the fact of the power of media, and the what has media done in the essence of helping, or hindering, or hurting the cause of black liberation. And what I mean by black liberation, that has everything to do with of equality. That has everything to do with checks and balances of the system itself. Like the Justice Department, in my opinion, is fully corrupt, and it's an embarrassment. The justice system is a total embarrassment, in my opinion, when it comes to always acting like they intervening to do something on behalf of a social injustice by police brutality. And when it comes out, they don't do anything at all. That's their history of not doing anything. It makes you wonder what the hell they sent out for. But even in that situation, the fact that checks and balances, this is the whole point of black liberation. And from my perspective, okay, I'm speaking from my perspective. I know you got those who take black liberation to the next level of, you know, where not everybody agree. But I'm talking about just from the basis of people like Malcolm X and I'm talking about people like Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers, those who were trying to work with the system to make changes within the system to benefit those who know who they are, who live here in America. Not talking about African conscious brothers, because to me, in my opinion, they need to go live in Africa. So on that note, I got another audio cast that I want to play, but before I play that audio cast, I wanted to point out I have an article by the Huffington Post, and I wanted to play this article. I wanted to read this article. The title of the article is "What Happened when 2 students, one black and one white, participate in peaceful protests. Now, the reason why I wanted to read this article, because I thought it was necessary. See, whenever the news or media talks about what's going on with the protesters, they either want to talk about a peaceful protest, and I think it's good when they cover peaceful protests, or they want to talk about when some violence or some activities comes out, and they mostly shining it on the protesters as being the agitators. They never talk about, it's a rarity, okay, I'm not going to say never, it's a rarity, but every now and then that rarity does show itself. But it's a rarity that they talk about the corruption, the agitation, the irritation, the abuse and brutality of police officers against protesters. Matter of fact, me and my queen did some research, and I was just curious about, is it documented about how many protesters get killed or hurt? I mean, I know just the protest that went on in Charlottesville, they said, Heather Heyer was killed, and they said 19 others were injured. Well, when I did some research, actually the number is higher. I've seen a number anywhere from 20 to 30 people who were hurt as a result of that clash. So I was just curious, what about in the 1950s and the 1960s? Was it recorded? Because when you see these police sicking dogs on the protesters, people who ain't got no sticks, they ain't got no sticks, no bats, no rocks, peaceful protesters, and you see dogs being sicked on them. You see police officers hitting them with their nightsticks and brutalizing the people. I was just curious how many, since white folks want to document, record, research, look under every crevice and rock and document everything, do they document the brutality and the deaths of those in the protest movement, starting in the civil rights movement? Did they document that? Excuse me. And so I just did a little footwork. My queen did a little footwork, and I was a little bit shocked at some of what I found out. Okay, let me see the research that I did, that my queen did from the, and we're just gonna start with something easy to look up. One of the guys one of the groups that document a lot of stuff that's supposed to be a non-biased or neutral-based non-profit organization, which is the Southern Poverty Law Center. Okay, they claim, according to their records, according to their research, that 40 people died during the civil rights movement, which I personally think that's grossly under-researched or underwritten. Would you agree, Queen? I mean, you looked up some of it, Queen. Go ahead.
It was hard to find anything on it, and they only want to document and talk about those whose names made the headlines, not the mass media where you see like the video footage of all those being injured and brutalized. They don't talk about how many people they're actually injured in any of the protests.
Well,
I could find at all.
Yeah, and we both, I mean, when you found what you found, we both looked at each other like with bewilderment. When you look at all the black folks that over the years that's been lynched, but they don't want to count them as protesters. So that's let me not go there with that. But the research you found so far says from the Southern Poverty Law Center states that the research yields 40 names. They range in age from 11 to 66. 8 were white, 32 were black. They came from all walks of life: students, farmers, ministers, truck drivers, and homemakers. And what is that right there? A Nobel laureate. Okay, so I guess a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Only 60 people. Okay, all right, but still, even that's still one too many. It doesn't matter. These are peaceful protesters who so far that they want us to know about. They only say, only 60, only 40 people, 40 names, okay, but only 40 people during the civil rights, according to the Southern part. And that's because you can't. I did research. I couldn't find anything, no research, no documentation that was done on it. Okay, let me go here. During a march on March 7th, a march that was done by a group that was called the SNCC and SCLC, which is I I believe Martin Luther King was a part of the organization, which was SNCC was the SNCC. Okay, but let me read this. This says on March 7th, more than 600 marchers led by the SNCC and the SLC gathered in Selma to march on solidarity, but between 17 and 50 people were injured, hospitalized. One woman, Amelia Boynton, nearly beaten to death. Definitely Dr. King roused nationwide support for a following march known as the Turnaround Tuesday, and returned to Selma to march on the 9th. Although the SCLC tried to legally obtain a court order to march on Montgomery, they were denied the document. The march went on, but the order to stay within legal means, King did not violate the court order and instead instructed 2,500 walkers to turn around after a short prayer. Okay, but my point is just to go for it. If you actually, let me go a little bit down, let me read some more. It says, it is known that the SNCC wanted more radical action compared to the peaceful tactics of the SCLC, but King was able to manage the tensions between the groups. On March 21st, under the federal protection, a massive group of 8,000 marchers successfully marched to Montgomery and met with the Stars of Freedom rally featuring Sammy Davis Jr. and Harry Belafonte and Tony Bennett and so forth. So the march went on. Wow. I mean, wow. When Martin Luther King did a march, you see thousands. He said 8,000. I mean, hundreds and thousands. That's why it drew so much attention. He wasn't just going to do a march with just, less than 100 people. When he tried to do a march, he wanted to draw serious attention. And that's why the media had to come in on that. And from some research that I did, that he would make sure he had people who worked under him or worked around him, having them contact reporters, contact the media, and informing them of what was going on and what he was going to do. And so that also energized and brought attention to it as well. Like I said, the power of the media. Now, I'm not sure what brothers and sisters are doing today. On a personal level, I was a part of a nonprofit organization back in, this was back in the 80s, in late 80s. I was a part of an organization called STAND, which meant Sacramento Taking Action for Neighborhood Dignity. And we would try to reach out to local news media to bring attention to things that we were dealing with, like police brutality. We also dealt with neighborhood lazy landlords. We call them lazy landlords, who was not taking care of the property in the black neighborhoods, was letting their property value go down, or allowing drug dealers to inhabit their property. So we would try to bring light to that on things like that through the nonprofit organization that I was a part of, that was dealing with bringing up the community. Specifically, we only dealt with the black community, and the media did not want to deal with it. So the media does choose what it wants to deal with. So before I take this to the next level, I want to play this other audio cast. I have an audio cast that I want to play by a brother who is named Charlemagne. He calls himself Charlemagne the God. He's a part of the DJ group called The Breakfast Club, which is a very well-known radio station that is played nationally, but it's based out of New York. But the reason why I want to talk about what he's going to play this audio cast is because Charlemagne deals with the Jamil Hill situation, and he deals with it so raw and uncut and so straightforward that it reminds me of me. But he sheds a lot of light on the truth of what's going on, how these people attack our people who have the power of media. Jamil Hill, by her being an ESPN reporter, she has the power of media. Just the fact that she's a media sportscaster, and she's a very well-known sportscaster, and so due to that, that's why they tried to hurt her. So I want to play this right quick, and we shall return.
Charlemagne the devil?
The Breakfast Club.
Yes, Donkey of the Day for Wednesday, September 13th goes out to ESPN. Oh, I watch ESPN all the time. I've appeared on various shows on ESPN. I love Around the Horn. I love PTI. I love The Six with Michael Smith and Jamel Hill. I love Coast to Coast with Carrie Champion. I rock with ESPN. But yesterday, ESPN did something I thought was stupid. And Donkey of the Day is all about giving people the credit they deserve for being stupid. So here we go. Now, on 9/11, the great Jamel Hill had a series of tweets. In fact, drop one of Clues bombs for Jamel Hill before we continue on. Okay. Jamel had a series of tweets about our current celebrity-in-chief, Donald Trump. I honestly don't know what prompted these tweets because I didn't dig too deep, simply because when I initially read these tweets, I didn't think anything of them because they weren't anything new. They weren't anything I hadn't heard about the celebrity-in-chief before. Let me read a few. Okay, Jamel Hill tweeted out, "Trump is the most ignorant, offensive president of my lifetime. His rise is a direct result of white supremacy, period." Where the lotto? Jamel tweeted, "He is unqualified and unfit to be president. He is not a leader, and if he were not white, he would never have been elected." Where the lotto? Jamel said on Twitter, "Donald Trump is empowered white supremacist." Somebody please stop Jamel when she stops speaking the truth. I haven't heard a lie yet. Jamel also tweeted, "Donald Trump is a bigot. Glad you could live with voting for him. I couldn't because I cared about more than just myself." And let's end with this doozy from Jamel Hill. Donald Trump is a white supremacist who has largely surrounded himself with other white supremacists. Now, nothing that was said by Jamel Hill is new. It's been said before by many people, and it's not a false narrative at all. If you was to poll a large part of the country, they would feel the exact same way as Jamel Hill does. But ESPN issued a statement on Jamel Hill, and they said the comments on Twitter from Jamel Hill regarding the president do not represent the position of ESPN. We have addressed this with Jamel, and she recognizes her actions were inappropriate. Well, I have two questions, ESPN. Number one, what exactly is your position on our current celebrity-in-chief, Donald Trump? I would love to know. I'm dying to know, because if you're not against what Trump represents, then you must be for what Trump represents. And if you're for what Trump represents, let me know so I can take my viewership somewhere else. Now, ESPN, you say you recognize Jamel's actions were inappropriate. What was inappropriate?
There you go. He raised the question. What did she say inappropriate? I mean, I read her tweet. My queen read her tweet. And you heard what Brother Charlemagne, he read part of the tweet to you. He read some of the most juiciest parts of the tweet, that he's unfit for office. She's not the first one who said this. Politicians has made this statement. Celebrities have made this statement. His supporters who don't agree with the way he's doing things, because he's not extreme enough for them, have made the same statement. And so I just found it, weird. I found it strange. I found it weird. It didn't make sense to me. What the hell are they talking about? I mean, threaten the girl's job. Queen, you got any more information on what's going on? What's up with this girl? What they trying to do to this girl?
Actually, they're just sweeping it under the rug and trying to act like none of it ever happened. So she's still the co-host of ESPN's Sports Center. She also used to write for ESPN.com's Page 2. But she's still there. They just don't want to talk about it no more.
Okay, but what was her job title? What show ESPN she?
Co-host of ESPN Sports Center.
Okay, so she's the co-host of ESPN's Sports Center, as I thought. Like I said, and because she's a black woman, and because she's a woman, and they always, it cracks me up. I mean, they always trying to shut people up, but they really be wanting to shut our sisters up. The sisters, boy, because a sister will bring something across and draw some attention. But what she said was totally true. She didn't say anything she say anything untrue, Queen, that you know of?
No. I read the tweets. Everything she said is what others have already been saying, and that's why when they call for her to be fired from ESPN, they're like, well, that's her opinion. She's entitled to it. It doesn't reflect on ESPN.
Well, one thing, she didn't do it at work anyway.
Nope, it was on her personal Twitter page.
It was on her personal Twitter page. So on that note, let me continue this podcast. And one thing I'm going to point out, though, by her making the statements that she made, that was the power of media protest again, because she is a host for ESPN, which gives her some media attention by those who are sportscasters who keep up with media. Like Charlemagne, he said he's about to let him. He questioned. He brought it to the face of ESPN. What's your position on our president? What's your position on our celebrity president, ESPN? So I can see if I want to discontinue my ESPN subscription. That's what Charlamagne the God was bringing in reference to Jamila Hill and them, call themselves chastising her or reprimanding her for her private statement on her account, her Twitter account, which she did not do from her desk or at work. Okay, so, but because she is an ESPN host, and that means she has a voice, she has a face, she has people who know about who she is, who keep up with sports. They're concerned about the media, the media protest, meaning she can make a protest, and by her speaking in opposition of President Trump's presidency, they took that as media protest. Someone like what Colin Kaepernick was doing without talking, because he wouldn't stand up, for the anthem, but he would take a knee or sit down. That's a media protest. Again, the power of media protest. You can protest and not even be a part of the media circle. You can just be making a statement like what Colin Kaepernick was doing, and what Brother Colin Kaepernick have done, many athletes have done, throughout the years in protest, like the famous brothers who stuck their foot, during the the 1960s Olympics, how they threw their black power fists in the air, and it just got the attention of media and everybody, knowing that it was a unity and a unison of black people showing that they're unity and that we all agree what's going on needs to make a change. And so that was that was Brother Charlamagne dropping the Raw and Uncut. Now, what about the media, as I was saying, covering the fact that the media does not cover properly? They don't give real, in my opinion, they're not fair. It's not fair coverage when it comes to police brutality. We know that the media more or less talks on behalf of police officers rather than giving fair coverage of what police activity does. I don't want to read this one article by the Huffington Post. Again, the title of the article is "What Happens When Two Students, One Black and One White, Participate in a Peaceful Protest." I'm going to read this article. So, Queen, do you have a copy of that right there?
Yep.
Go ahead, please.
Article begins, "We are two students, one black, one white, at Union Theological Seminary, an institution historically and presently committed to fighting against injustice through faith and action. We were outraged by the non-indictment in the case of Eric Garner, which is only the most recent example of our law enforcement's lack of accountability for violent action, particularly when said violence is committed against communities of color. On Friday night, we participated in a peaceful protest march calling for change. Together, we lay in Macy's, in Grand Central, and on the wet, cold ground of Byron Park. Together, we marched to the streets of our city, demanding that justice be served against those sworn to protect and serve when they so egregiously violate this promise. The march ended on the FDR when we stood together, arm in arm, as riot police charged. We linked arms to show that neither of us stood alone. We linked our arms to show our solidarity in the fight against injustice, police brutality, and the slaying of black bodies. We loudly proclaimed that Black Lives Matter. Up to this point in our story, we acted identically. We acted in unison, and we committed the same acts of civil disobedience. It is at point in this story, however, that our narratives sharply diverged. Ironically so, as this treatment only underscored the unfortunate truth we had taken to the streets to protest. Black and white bodies are not treated equally. As a line of riot cops approached, two officers broke off and headed directly towards us. Both of them went after the black one of us, Sean, forcefully ripping us apart. A few seconds later, an officer grabbed Ben, the white one of us, and threw him to the ground. Then the officer leaned over and whispered in Ben's ear, "Just get out of here." No such offer was made to Sean. Ben stood up, suddenly and bewilderingly free, and saw Sean being dragged off towards the police vans. Unwilling to abandon his friend, Ben waited until he, too, was arrested. at which point the person who had cuffed him sought out someone else to officially take him in. In the meantime, as Sean spoke with his arresting officer, another officer accused him of making smart remarks and charged him charged into the back of the police holding van. Afraid and feeling physically threatened, Sean yelled, "I am not saying anything smart." The officer backed off, and eventually Ben joined him in the van. At the station, Sean had his 2.5-inch round Union Seminary button removed because it could be used as a weapon. Ben kept his. With a broken phone in the holding cell, we each asked our arresting officers to make a phone call on our behalf. Ben's officer made the call. Sean's officer declined. Another officer entered the cell to speak with us and referred to Latinos as the real thugs, intensifying an already unsafe atmosphere for Sean, who was half Puerto Rican. Looking at the story of our arrest, we find both commonality and difference. We both peacefully surrendered to the police, and we both found our peaceful surrender met with violence response. This did not surprise either of us, but our lack surprise is indicative of how normative it has become for police to use violence as a first response instead of as a last resort. More pressing than this commonality, though, is the difference in our experiences. At a protest of how the law treats white and black bodies differently, police treated our white and black bodies differently. At the end of the day, this difference did not end tragically for either of us. We are not seriously hurt and were released from jail later that evening. However, in the case of Eric Garner and far too many black bodies in this country, this difference in perception is fatal. Justice may be blind, but our officers who enforce it are most certainly not.
Okay, I want to end it right there. My point of you reading this again is showing how the media doesn't cover this. We have two separate protesters. One name is Sean. Sean is black. Ben is white. Okay? And as you read this, Queen, he pointed out, obviously, they both came together with the perspective of recording what was if there was any difference between how the officers treated black protesters versus white protesters. And it's if somebody was to ask me that question, do you believe black protesters and white protesters get treated the same? My first response would be, of course they're not treated the same. You don't see white people saying that they're being racially profiled by cops. Cops are racially profiling black and brown people. Now, we know the media has covered racial profiling, and even though racial profiling has been covered by the media, the question is it covered properly? Because as a result of this improper coverage, you still got ignorant white people who don't believe that racial profiling go on. Isn't that true, Queen?
That is definitely true.
So it's definitely a bias in the way media covers social interaction with police, peaceful protesting, and even how, rather, if they don't cover or don't talk about things that go on in detail with the activity between protesters and police officers, like in this situation right here, where you see the cop bending down and telling Ben, the white boy, to leave, telling the protester to leave. And because he didn't leave, furthermore, even as they were being taken into custody, you see a situation where they were trying to provoke a situation between Sean, the black protester, as if he had said something to give the cop a reason to hurt him. And then further, once they got down to the police department, how they allowed Ben to make a phone call. The officer made a phone call. Well, there was a broken phone in the cell that they were in, but the officer for Ben made a phone call. But the officer for Sean wouldn't even he declined him a phone call. So it's definitely a difference, and that right there shows right there is a prime example of white supremacy in the essence of showing a difference on how white people have a privilege, and that privilege is definitely they use it. They use it to their perspective, but obviously there's a lot of white people that want to break down that wall of segregation, that wall of white supremacy, or what they call white privilege. They want that wall to be destroyed. So you have a lot of white people out there who want to make this change. They want this stuff to stop. They want officers. They want their public servants, which are politicians. They want people to all be treated equally. They want everybody to be treated equally. And that's what we have to learn to do. And this is the power of media. This is where the power of media come in. The power of media protests come in. When we use the media properly, and those who have the power of media use it properly in reference to benefit not just the black community, but the brown community and all those who are mistreated and unjustly treated. But the reason why black people are specifically speak to this situation is because it's been black people since slavery and the advent of so-called freedom from slavery who've been fighting for equality. We shouldn't have to, we're in the year 2017 and we're still fighting the same thing that was being fought against back in the 1950s, 40s, 30s, and so forth. And that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And that tells me right there the only way things are really going to change is when you got white people who are willing to stand up. Like the white boy Ben, who said, hey, this man spoke in my ear and told me to leave the protest, as if he's trying to give me a way out. But he didn't do that to my black friend Sean, who we had each other's hands. We was marching together. It's going to take white people standing up and being honest and being truthful about how they're given a privilege that nobody else with brown or black skin have. So on that note, Queen, anything you want to shed on this? The power of media and media protest. We didn't get a chance to mention the fact that when it comes to Latinos and police brutality, you don't see the media covering police brutality in the Latino community that much. I'm gonna tell you right now, they're being killed, shot, brutalized just as much, if I ain't gonna say much more, but I would say just as much or almost as much as black Americans. Would you agree?
I don't see them treating them any different. And I also see how in the media how the portrayals of things go on. And I question. They're supposed to be non-biased. They're supposed to be non-biased and report just the facts. But you can see in the media how biased they are. If they took off the uniform of the officer and didn't even mention that was the officer, there would be an outrage on these crimes that police officers do.
Yeah, that's real.
They would be not spoken about the same way.
Yeah. But you know what? It goes on.
Because they are officers, they're like giving this blind faith as if they can commit no wrong, when we know this is an untrue statement.
But what about in reference to the fact that media, and that's what I'm saying. Even in that introduction that you read, the introduction of the role of mass media in economic development that you read, and it mentioned a part that mentioned about, let me see my cover. It says let me read a part of this again. It says let people voice diverse opinions on governance and reform and help public consensus to bring about change. Such media can help markets work better. They facilitate trade, transmitting ideas, innovation across boundaries. The media are also important for human development, bringing health and education information to remote villages and countries from Uganda to Nigeria. But as experience has shown, the independence of the media can be fragile and easily compromised. I thought that was a very important part of this introduction that this book brings out in the role of the media in economic development. It says fragile and easily compromised. And so due to that part right there, easily compromised and fragile, that lets me know that the media can be easily influenced by those with power. Those with power. That means those in government with power. Those elite with wealth, which is power. That means media can be easily compromised. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the fact that when it comes to covering something properly, how they make the protesters look like they all violent when there's maybe only a handful of violent ones out there, or maybe none at all. Or when you got the police out there that's provoking violence when the protesters are trying to be peaceful, and you got cops out there throwing smoke bombs and cops shooting rubber bullets for no reason at all. Or, you know, instead of dealing with the person who's being agitative, they try to treat everybody as if they're being agitative. But when you got cops that are unnecessarily spraying mace at people, things of that nature, trying to provoke something when nothing is going on, and you don't see the media covering it. The media says nothing. There's silence in it, and these are the things that we have to make the media be a media of integrity. It's going to take us, those who protest, those who speak about the truth, that make the media live up to its terms of integrity by speaking out and bringing out the facts that the media is very much biased when it decides to be or when it wants to be. Our mainstream media is definitely biased, and I say that because you have many sources on the internet that give you the raw and uncut of truth. Prime example, when it came to the Charlottesville clash, you had many media sources out there that was had no integrity when it came to telling the truth of what was going on. But you had one source out there, not one of the sources that I like the most, which was an organization, news journal called Democracy Now!, that gave the raw and uncut. That you had protesters out there that were being beat. There was a young man out there who was a protester, who was also a teacher and also a rapper, who was nearly beat to death. You didn't hear nobody saying anything about how many of the white supremacist organizations out there who were out there with bats, chains, sticks, chairs, whatever they could, and some of them was carrying guns. You feel me? And so that's what I'm talking about. It's going to take us sticking together, the black and brown people, Latino people, Indian people, indigenous people, Aboriginal people, black American people, us, and those white people with a conscience, the white people who are standing up. Because like I said, there's one thing I can say about the clash in the Charlottesville clash. It was a beautiful thing to see white people out there socking white racist white people upside the head. It was a beautiful thing. I mean, Quinn, what do you have to say about that?
That's showing true togetherness, and the more and more that white folks stand up together for the injustice, then the inequality, showing that these injustices are constantly happening, and this is not just hurting just the black communities, it's hurting all communities. If black folks can't trust their police and they're showing this distrust, it's going to start reflecting in the white communities, because their egos are just going to continue to get bigger and bigger.
Well,
and bigger.
The thing about it, that's the thing. That's not what's going on, though. They're not bringing the same in the white communities. White people are not complaining about brutality. White people are not complaining about being racially profiled. White people are not being complained about being roughed up or threatened by cops. It's happening in the black and brown communities. And the media is not correctly, non-biasedly, it's not truthfully covering it. And that's what we do know. So on that note, my time is short. My show is from 3 to 4. I'm always going past that time limit. And my queen definitely makes me conscious of time. That's why I like when she's here. But, when I'm alone, sometimes I go a little bit over time. But I can't, I got to stick to my time clock like a real show. I will be back. I will be black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut here every Sunday here on the Black Village Community Podcast. You can chime in. It doesn't cost you a dime. Just a bit of your conscious time. You can chime in at 855-445-9340. You can also chime in at 857-232-0155. And don't forget the conference key to get through the conference door, which is 947-595 here at the Black Village, at the table of truth here at the Black Village Community Podcast. And as always, I will be back. I will be black and aboriginal. You feel me? As always. So on that note, before I go, anybody got any last words? Brother Currington, you got anything you want to say about what you've heard so far, and any closing notes before we hit the dough, my brother?
No, it was a very good podcast, and it does show that the media does influence us. And that's something people really need to realize, how much it influences.
That's true. The power of the media. And, that's why people, the celebrities who stand up, and say something, we got to give them their credit where credit is due, because they putting their jobs on the line. They putting their lives on the line. They putting their career, on the line, and so when they do these things, like brother Colin Kaepernick, a lot of people want to criticize him, talking about, he's taking a knee, but you know what, he ain't doing nothing. That man has given a lot of his money to help the people in his community, black people, brown people. He's given a lot of his money, as well as he's given his knee, and he's given his attention to what's going on, to shed light on what's going on in the black community and police brutality. And as a result, they blackballing him from the NFL to hurt him. Well, he was prepared for that, and that was a sacrifice he took. But those of us who know that white nationalism is throughout the system in this government, throughout the system in this society, and every facet of career, from the NFL to the police department to the public office, we got to make it known. And in the process, we also got to do what it takes to come together as a people and break down the boundaries that we have on a social level, so we can truly unify as a people. Any last words, bro, before you go? Anything else you want to say before we hit the road and be back next Black Delicious Sunday? Brother Carrington?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. Queen, any last words before we head up out of here, girl?
Oh, just my usual, but people, stay united. Stay united.
And I totally agree with my queen. And so, on that note, I gotta go. I will be back. I will be Black, Aboriginal, and Indigenous, as always, dropping nothing but the raw nut cut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And, as I always say, may the Great Mother bring us together under the wings of her love and her peace. And as always, I love chicken, so love, peace, and chicken grease. I gotta go. I'm out here.
Everybody's gone. The government don't wanna see.
Oh, they see and hear us now. R.I.P. Mike Brown. Got shots to my city for coming together. Ain't never seen nothing like it. I can say this happened in my day. Shout out to the peaceful protesters who march and rally. Got even shot the others who thought they had to take other measures. All in belief, though, not reckless. I salute my city. Let me tell you how it went down. Got the world watching. They can feel the tension of an angry generation. Fuck a politician, it's my people on the mission. They finally fed up of the injustices, and they finally said enough. We get flagged by the county brown every time we riding down Chambers, so the anger just inflame if you gun us down. Could have been my son or my nephew or my cousin though. Say he tried to get his gun, witness say he wasn't though. So this lack of info make it seem like who you covering for. So it got us thinking you just killed that boy for nothing. No shit got shifty when the cop fled quickly. Then they brought the dogs in like it was 1950. We like, hold up, this before the whole thing had blown up. They roll up M16 soon as they show up. This is the scenario. Go check the news audio. Calling us some animals before the riot started, bro. To add to the equation, this is one of the most racist places you can ever stay in the nation. So the rage is all inside, only so long you can hide it. You can't play us, you can't slay us, so some chose to ride. And though I don't condone all the looting and the boosting and the stupid selfish shit that is clouding up the movement, but I feel the pain, and I still feel like we gain from everything to show the world this won't happen again. We can redirect some aim, some cases can pipe it down. Let's not get distracted, this hers for Mike Brown. But hey, you see the news, bro, looking like Fallujah. 4 days later, they still ain't named the shooter. We just want the truth, bro. Could've done this easily. They even pulling out the tanks for folks who marching peacefully. America, you heard us, son. Live dog from Ferguson, and we ain't never settle into justice. They gon' serve us some. Yeah. And all we want is justice. What's right is right and wrong is wrong. Ain't even about color. You know how that go. Shout out to everybody in my city. Talking about my fellow artists, producers, and just freedom fighters.